Hey everybody! Thanks for joining me for this second demonstration of the Introduction to Music Production course module. In this demonstration, we're going to explore some of the essentials of mixing. Now we're going to explore channel strips and some of the processing that happens to signals after things have been recorded and are going through the mixing phase. So let's just dive right in. In this demonstration, we're going to be spending most of our time within the mix window of the Reason interface. But before we got started, I just wanted to kind of go over how things work and get set up into the mixing phase. So here in the sequencer window, we've got all our tracks and clips laid out for our loop project. But where does all this sound go to? If we take a look at the instrument or rack window where all the effects and instruments are, I can hit the tab key to flip the rack around and see the back of it and all the wires. You'll see that all the wires wind up going up towards the top and eventually congregate into this master section. So what exactly does that mean? It means that all these outputs from these instruments and effects go into the mix window that emulates a mixing console in a recording studio. And you'll see we have inputs here at the top. So the outputs from the instruments go into the inputs on the console, and then the signal flows down through all these parameters, eventually getting to the volume faders down at the bottom. So that's how signal flows from the instrument through the mixing console. Now before we actually start mixing the audio, we need to deal with some organizational issues. Before I do any changes at all, I'm going to go and save this session with a new name, just so I can keep the original recording session intact and then have my additional personal mix of a song. The next organizational issue to deal with is track naming. Now you'll see that I have most of my tracks named appropriately, but these two here still just have the names of the instruments that are created. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the solo button so I only hear this particular element and press play to find out what it is. That sounds like a kick drum to me, so I'll label it accordingly. And then perform the same operation on this next track. There we have the guitar. Now that I have everything named appropriately, you'll notice that there's no real rhyme or reason to the order of these, and I think it would be nice to have all the percussion, all the different groups of instruments together. So what I'm going to do is very easily just click, drag, and move the position of any of the percussion elements. And then what I can do to organize these even further is select a group of tracks, right click, and then change the color coordination. Just so now I know all my percussion is in red. And my synth instruments I'll put in green. There. Much easier to deal with and much prettier. Now let's delve into the channel strip. As I said previously, the outputs from the instruments go into the mixing console here, and then each individual element works down through all these different parameters. So let's take this by section. First, we have the dynamic section. What this is going to do is allow you to use a compressor to reduce the dynamic range of an audio signal. Dynamic range refers to the difference between the softest and the loudest parts of an audio signal. So by increasing compression, you can make an audio signal more consistent. The next section on the channel strip is the EQ section. What this means is that I can increase or decrease specific frequencies of this particular audio signal using these parameters here. We'll get more into EQ and compression in further demonstrations. Moving further down the channel strip, here we have the insert section. Now what this allows me to do is to load preset patches, much like we did with instrument sounds, although this is going to contain effects that will apply to this audio signal specifically. So, just like the instrument patches, I can click the folder and browse through different patches. Next is the Send section. Sends allow me to insert effects that can apply to more than one track. For example, I've created a send effect that is a plate reverb here, and if I wanted to apply that to, say, the guitar part, I'll solo the guitar part and begin playing the loop, enable the effect, and then I can turn the effect up or down. I can apply that same effect to any other track. So let's just listen to the piano and the bass and then apply some reverb as well. Much better. Finally, we come to the fader section of the console. Here we can make adjustments with volume levels using the faders. We can also adjust stereo width and also the panning of each signal. Before we get started actually manipulating the volume levels and the panning, I also want to draw attention to the master fader here, and the meter especially. You do not want your master level meter to ever get into the red and be clipping. That means you're causing distortion. A good technique to get used to is turning down the volume of all the elements before you get started mixing. I'll just turn these all down to about -10, -15, and we'll start adjusting from there. Another good habit to get used to doing is to turn down the volumes of the unwanted sounds as opposed to turning up the volume of the wanted sounds. So now I'll actually play the loop and let it repeat, and then I'll just start adjusting the volume levels to get a better balance for all the different sounds. Nice, I think that's starting to sound good. But what can we do to make this sound even better? We can adjust the stereo width of sounds, which can prevent certain sounds from overlapping with one another. To demonstrate this idea, let's solo the pad instrument and take a listen while reducing the stereo width, and you'll notice how the sound gets thinner. So we can utilize this function to give each instrument and each sound its own space within the mix. So again, I'm going to play my loop on repeat and make some adjustments to stereo width and also to panning, all while I'm watching the master meter just to make sure I never distort. So what I've done is reduce the stereo width of MIDI elements and also pan them to different areas so it sounds like instruments are coming from different areas of the stereo field. And that's really going to help make this mix sound more pleasing and enhance the listening experience. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of the mixing phase of the music production process. Don't forget that this can be a difficult phase, and sometimes it's necessary to step back from your productions, take a break, and then come back and look at things objectively before we begin making any changes. Enjoy mixing. See you next time.